Okay, Speed City, let's talk tyres, and we're here with a man who knows all about them, Trevor Schmack of E-Tech Racing and obviously also of Michelin. So we want to learn as much as we can because we know that in motor racing, obviously tyres are key.
Yeah, first of all, I want to know how much more prestigious does this series become once it's sponsored by a company like Michelin?
Well, I think Michelin's heritage has motorsport. In our heritage, you look at Le Mans, for example, and all the junior categories where the young drivers are going through. I think it's very important for Michelin to be in New Zealand. A lot of the drivers that are racing here will progress their careers on Michelin product in Europe, in Euro Cup Renault and Renault 3.5, on their way to Formula 1 or Le Mans.
And some people understand, I mean, the bottom line is, in a series like this, all the tyres and the allocation of tyres is identical, so no one's got an advantage when it comes to actually choosing tyres.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, we bring, for this series, about 1,200 tyres, and I can say with my experience that all the tyres are exactly the same. So the drivers, it's up to them to take the best advantage of the new tyre when it's available for qualifying. But the consistency through the series, and also when the tyres has some mileage on it after racing, even in the testing, it still maintains a consistency. The drop-off is very little. There's a peak in qualifying when the tyre's new, but thereafter they can test and learn their craft and drive the car because the tyre remains very consistent.
So there's always different strategies when it comes to tyres. What is the progression between qualifying and race one for these tyres in the TRS?
Look, it's important for the drivers and their engineers how they manage the tyres. After qualifying, they'll check all of their tyres and they'll put.
What are those commentators doing over that PA system?
Noisy commentators.
Now, we'll keep going. But the beauty of our tyre is that it's not directional, so we can swap it from left to right, which means after qualifying, often the teams will swap the tyres from left to right because this being a predominantly right-hand track, the left-hand tyres are doing the most work. So we swap the tyres left to right, and it gives them a fresher tyre on the left for the races and so on. So how they manage their tyres and when they use them in the shorter or the longer race, that's the combination of a driver and engineer.
During commentary, you'll often hear commentators saying, "Oh, the tyres are going off," and because they reach an optimal both temperature and degradation where basically they're fastest. In this series, what is that number of laps, or roughly, before they start to lose that optimal ability?
Yeah, I wouldn't go along with the theory that the tyres go off. I think they have a consistency, and it's about the level at which the drivers are driving. Often you'll see particularly younger drivers over-driving, and that might be confused with the tyre going off. I mean, it's not like the current scenario in Formula 1 where the tyres are made to do Our tyres are built to do a consistent run and provide a level platform for the drivers to learn their craft. So in this series, it's important that the tyres remain very consistent. Across a 20 lap race, the drivers still need to manage all of their resources, which is their own speed and their own focus and performance, and the tyre is a factor, but I wouldn't class it as effectively going off like you might hear some commentators saying.
Okay.
There's so much to learn about tyres, and especially with drivers as young as they are, like in the TRS. How do you educate them? Is it more just experience, or do you actually sit down and have a conversation with these drivers about how they should handle their tyres?
Look, we talk to them about managing their situation on track, which is, the tyres are part of that. But across this series, they run 13 sets of tyres. They have 2 sets per race weekend and 3 sets of test tyres. So they have good opportunity to see, when the tyres are performing well, and if they go out in qualifying and they have a spin on a new set of tyres, it sort of wastes a set. So they need to manage their resources in that respect.
In terms of what we're looking at here, we've got obviously the slicks and the wets. Perhaps again, you can explain. 101, we're learning here. How they design the wet tyre and obviously how it compares in terms of feel to the dry.
Well, the reason that the wet tyre has a groove in it, your road car at home, you have grooves in your tyres because you drive your car some days in a wet condition and some days in a dry condition. But if it never ever rained where you lived, that gives you more grip and more tread because it's all rubber that's in contact with the road. But the reason you have grooves in the tyre is to evacuate the water. So, but again, the Michelin wet, our history is linked to our performance, particularly in the wet. And again, what you want is a consistent tyre across the race distance.
So in a race like what we had last weekend, how do you know what to do with your tires when the track is wet, but it's starting to dry and you're getting that dry line?
You'll see the drivers searching for the wet part of the road when there's a dry line, because they're trying to look after the temperature of the tyre, because this tyre is not designed to run on an absolutely dry track, and it'll overheat very quickly. The depth of rubber is much thicker than there is on a slick tyre, and the temperature of the surface of the tyre will increase very quickly on a dry track. So that's why you'll see the drivers often deviating to, a wet line to keep the tyres as cool as they can before they enter the corners.
And is that something that, well, especially in this series, there's no pit stops. So when you're going into a race, you just have to pick one and stick with it.
It's, look, managing the tyre pressure, that's another area that the driver and the engineer will work with. And some drivers may have a personal preference for when the tyre, the pressure characteristic at the start of a race, they may run a slightly higher pressure at the start and so on. So that's something where the drivers, and let's face it, this is a learning experience for the drivers here. I mean, they've come here this series, and in 4 weeks they've experienced, hot, dry conditions like we are here, wet conditions, some coming, conditions that are drying. So that's what the Toyota Racing Series is all about. It gives these guys, in the space of a month, more experience that they could possibly have in a whole season back in Europe or America or wherever they're coming from.
And in terms of tyre pressures, does that ever become tactical when you go from different tracks? I mean, I'm looking at this track, it's only a tiny track compared perhaps to Mansfield, which will be longer straights. Is that a factor in terms of how you set up the tyres for use of a different track?
It can be. Probably much more with a touring car or a GT car is tactical work with the tyre pressure for qualifying and the like. Here what we're looking for is a more consistent run, and in qualifying here you try and give the driver all of the laps they can possibly do during qualifying to gain a tenth or two, because as you see in the qualifying there's only 3 or 4 tenths covers the top 10 or 12 cars. So every opportunity they have to run. But in a touring car, which is heavier and the tyre has whole different characteristics, you might run a higher pressure for qualifying but do less laps and what have you. So it's horses for courses.
What are the signs that the drivers are looking for? Is that skidding through a turn or?
No, they don't like skidding. they like more grip, and they love new tyres.
Right.
New tyres are the best thing.
But what are the things that they feel when they're in the car to make the changes to their tires?
Look, what's important for the young drivers here is to develop a smooth, flowing, performance, and trying to be exact. Don't put a wheel off on the curbs or upset the balance of the car. And you can see in this field here of 20 or so drivers, the guys with more experience than the others are making less mistakes, and it's just evident out there in that first race today and in qualifying that the guys, the experience is coming to the fore. And sometimes in a wet race you might get a bit of luck, and lots of guys have got potential for speed, but being able to do it week on week is about experience, and that's what they're here for.
I was going to say, I suppose one of the amateur things that you would do if we started driving now for you, and you were like, right, okay, watch the tyres, flat spotting them was one thing, on braking too hard and basically taking too much rubber down on one particular part of the tyre itself. Or does that happen with these?
Look, the key is being smooth, and the thing is, a lot of these guys will fly back to Europe or wherever they're going to on the long flights, and they'll think, I made a mistake here and I made a mistake there, and if you can rule a lot of that out, I mean, again, that's what the Toyota Racing Series is about. These guys here are not only testing, but they're qualifying and they're racing, and they've got the reverse grid races, they've got wet races and dry races, and so, as I say, they pack so much into 5 weeks. It is such a unique experience, and as a brand like ours, we're proud to be involved with a category like this that really gives these young drivers the opportunity to progress their careers.
Well, you're the head of E-Tech Motorsport, and you're definitely the man to know when it comes to tires, so I'm sure everybody over there has a nice little advantage. Well,
we're you
got him, Nat. You got him.
If there was an advantage to have, but all our tyres are the same. That's what I was telling you before.
Hey, he knows what he's doing. He's got the simulator, he's got the tires, he's got it all.
Well, Trevor, thank you for talking to us, and best of luck this weekend and for the rest of the year.
It's great fun having you here.